right, here we go. How is everybody doing today? Not even open yet. Already getting the business WhatsApps. Let me handle this. All right. So we are pushing forward in the new year. Got a couple things going on. Of course, the organization has went ahead and dedicated itself to creating 100 new generational wealth families by the end of this year. That is our 2026 goal. We are well on our way. We have 4 families that are currently being processed. Onboarding the 5th this evening in a trust fund meeting. So that's that's looking good so far. We really believe the more people are focused on their generational wealth, the more we can do with that, just the better off the communities will be in general. So that is definitely our 2026 focus. We still have the end of year 2025 special going on. There are 3 spots left in that end of year special. So that end of year special included immigration processes to Kenya. It included tax compliance. It included plot of land. It included a greater than 1,600 square foot brand new built home. And it included a trust fund, and it included a bond ladder, the most important part, which allows for passive income, so that the person who is looking to relocate doesn't necessarily need to worry about having income or finding a job or anything like that. The bond ladder would be paying passive income the entire time they were here. So that is the end of year special. In order to get the bond ladder done, um, we have that special will expire February 15th. How many bonds in the ladder again? There are six bonds in the ladder. Kenyan bonds pay out biannually, right? Some other countries, their bonds pay out annually. Kenyan bonds pay out every 6 months. So 6 bonds give you 12 payments a year. All right, so you need 6 for a full ladder. If you're just interested in the bonds but not the end of year special or not relocation, can we do that? Yes, yes, yes. There are 2 main ways that people engage with our bond ladders without being relocation clients. One is their generational wealth clients, right? So they're setting up a trust fund, and they don't want to spend the next 15 years funding the trust fund, right? So then they just do one bond ladder. The bond ladder pays into the trust for the next 10, 15, 20, 25, even 30 years, depending on the length of the bond, and it does it for you. And then the trust compounds on its own. Excuse me. And then whenever your heirs, or the beneficiaries of the trust are eligible to start taking money out of that trust, it's there for them. So that's one way that people engage with it without necessarily looking to relocate. Another major way that people engage with the bond ladders without looking for relocation is they will set up a business. It's typically like Airbnb or something of that nature, but they'll set up a business here, and then instead of having that business nickel and dime them, as all business owners and entrepreneurs know, when you set up a new business, there's always these little things that come up. You got to come out of your pocket more money and more money and more money before you really start making a profit, right? So we call that runway, the money that you have set aside to keep the business running even before you start making money. All right, the term for it is runway. And so what some folks will do is they'll do a bond ladder. So that would set the amount of income that's coming into their money, into their business monthly, and they set up all their payroll and their bills and stuff based on that. And then profit is literally extra, right? But it would show up on the books as owner's capital. right? So you wouldn't have to be pumping money into the business, but every month there would be money being pumped into the business in your name, essentially. And again, that bond ladder is going to be 10 years, 15, 20, 25, maximum is 30, right? So you can have that money flowing. And since it's going into the business as owner's capital, once the business is fine and doesn't need that money anymore, you can shift that money to your own, bank account because your money to begin with. So there's that. So those are the two major ways that people engage without relocation. Hey, Mr. Wale, what's going on? Or Mr. Whale, I'm not sure how you say that. So I listen to you, but I don't hear you. Can you not, can you physically not hear me right now? Or is that figure of speech? Let me know. If you can't hear me, I'll reset the YouTube live. And see, YouTube, I can't type. So see, on TikTok, I can type in the chat and ask a question. But on YouTube, I can't. Can you hear me right now? That's one thing I can't stand about YouTube. The engagement's good on YouTube. I like, the people on YouTube, but the technology options suck. I might start using StreamYard, but I don't think I can StreamYard from TikTok, so I'll still have a separate TikTok device, but I might start using StreamYard and just go live everywhere on the StreamYard. Hi Anthony. Can you hear me, Anthony? Still trying to figure out if YouTube can hear me or not. But anyway, so to answer your question, that is the two major ways that people engage. You can just run a bond ladder and then take the ROI in the US. It just doesn't hit the same way. And then you got to worry about the exchange rate. So if the exchange rate fluctuates, then what you're getting might fluctuate. You can hear me. Okay, cool. All right, so that was a figure of speech, Mr. Whale. I got you. I got you. It'd be like that, man. It's not a problem. I was in the same boat. Early on. My first business, I started my first business at 16. And the worst thing that could possibly happen happened. It was successful. You actually want to fail in your first business, right? You don't ever go into business expecting to fail, but as far as your learning curve and your progression goes, it's actually much better if you fail in the first business. Dust yourself off, pick yourself up, learn from that failure. So fail forward, as we call it, and then go into the next business. Not me. I was successful in the first business, which actually handicapped me for the next three businesses because I expected whatever I did to just work, right? So it's kind of the same thing with natural talent. I used to teach martial arts. That's actually the first business I was in. So I had a successful martial arts program that I ran through the local YMCA, very successful. And then I opened up my own school, right? Which was also successful for about 5 years. And so you could have somebody come in and they were naturally a great fighter, right? And so, they might only be with you for 2 months and they can already fight your black belt level people, right? The problem with that is you get to a plateau of where your natural skill can take you, and then you don't have the skills to get better, right? So when you had no skills and you had to, level up from belt to belt to belt, you learned how to practice. You learned how to throw enough punches that your punch got faster. You learned how to throw enough punches that your punch got stronger, right? You punched the wrong way enough but you hurt your wrist that you learned to correct, the way that you threw that punch from then on, right? So that's what the training does. That's what the failures do, right? They teach you how to do it the right way. If you happen to luck out and do it perfectly the first time, you don't learn how to do the training. You don't learn how to build skill and how to, fail forward, essentially. So once I got done with the martial arts business, And I branched out into other things. Like the next four were abysmal failures, and the first one I didn't fail forward because I didn't expect to. I didn't know how to fail, right? So the first one I didn't even learn the lessons from that failure, and then failed again. And then so it's like I got reset and had to start all the way from the beginning, even though I should have been halfway to having good systems in place and like legitimate business in place. So that's what happens. So definitely don't worry about the not being able to pull the trigger type of thing. It's a growth situation, which is kind of why I do what I do. A lot of people are like, why you give away so much information, all of that. Only the people who are ready are going to pull the trigger anyway. Doesn't matter how much I tell people. It doesn't matter how much they know. It doesn't matter. A lot of people are just into what I call mental masturbation. They just want information until they get off on it, and then they walk away. They don't do anything with it. That's part of the process. It's part of the growth, and then eventually, when they're ready to do something, hopefully, they have enough base information to do it the right way. By then, typically, the information is outdated, though, so they still need to go get a professional. But that's typically the way it works out. So don't worry about it, Mr. Whale. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. All right. It was a product distribution business. The next one, it was a product distribution business, and I can't even remember the product. It was that long ago, and it was that abysmal of a failure. Yeah, I can't even remember what the product was. All right, so sorry, did I neglect a question over there? No, actually, no. It depends. We do all our generational wealth trusts in Kenya because there are certain rules to the type of trust that we use here that we like for generational wealth. Um, Outside of that, there are different countries that we may use for like asset protection trusts, depending on how many assets are there. So if you're like ultra high net worth, then maybe we'll do Cook Islands, maybe we'll do Nevis, for ultra high net worth and ultra high liability, right? So if you're like in a super litigious, business, um, or even if your profession is super litigious, right? Like a lot of doctors have to deal with this because medical malpractice suits don't necessarily have to have meat on the bone, right? Just somebody got hurt in a surgery. That was the risk of the surgery. It's not nothing even wrong was even done. There's just a risk to every surgery, and so that risk played out in this one surgery, and then they're on your medical malpractice insurance, right? And so that's a super litigious career. Like you're going to get sued more than once. You know what I mean? As a doctor, typically your insurance and your hospital is going to take care of it or whatever. But there are times when the judgment is beyond the scope of the malpractice insurance and all of that stuff. And so a lot of doctors are going to have their offshore trust set up for asset protection, not necessarily generational wealth. Like they'll typically have that too, but their main concern is the fact that they know they're in a litigious field. They know that a lot of lawsuits are going to pop up. And so they want to make sure that if anything goes left with a lawsuit, that their entire, child's inheritance isn't just poof, gone, right? So those are asset protection trusts. They're a little bit different than generational wealth trusts. Asset protection trusts require assets. So those are the trusts that are for people who have things, right? And depending on how many things you have and what kind of things you have, that will dictate which countries are best for the trust that you're trying to set up. So no, it's not just Kenyan trusts, but in generational wealth trusts are Kenyan. They're all Kenyan trusts. What's the main difference? The main difference is the asset thing, right? So if you're doing a generational wealth trust, you don't have to have any money, right? You're building generational wealth, right? So it's not an expectation that you got a bunch of wealth already. because you're building generational wealth. Now, some people do. Some people show up and they're like, I got $2 million that I want to deploy in a trust, right? Which means they have more than $2 million if they have $2 million to deploy. But that's few and far between, right? So most people who are focused on generational wealth, they don't have, millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to deploy. They're trying to build generational wealth for the next generation, right? And sometimes those clients have like real hardship, and like that's what's driving them. They don't want the next generation to have to deal with that level of hardship, so they're doing the generational wealth trust for that purpose, right? So with the generational wealth trust, you're not protecting a bunch of assets, you're building assets, right? Which typically you do within a business, right? So typically you build assets in a business and then you protect the assets in the trust. But with a generational wealth trust, everything you're doing is for another generation. So the same logic doesn't apply. If you were doing it for yourself, like if you were creating your trust and that you wanted to use this trust personally, then you can say, okay, I'm going to build the assets in a company, and as I get the assets, I'm essentially going to strip the assets out of the company into the trust, right? And then that trust is going to, compound for me for maybe a small amount of time, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years or whatever, but I want to use it. That's a different strategy, right? So for your heirs, you want the biggest bang for the buck for the heirs, and that's going to be 15, 20, 30, even 60 years. A lot of people will do their grandchildren. We had this influx of religious people that, Proverbs 12:33 or something like that, where it says that a wise man leaveth an inheritance for his children's children. So we had a bunch of like religious people that were like, the Bible told me that I have to leave an inheritance for my grandkids, and so we were doing that. And some of those folks didn't even have kids. So because they didn't even have children yet, it was like a 60-year trust, right? So they were setting things up for the children of their children that they hadn't even had yet, which is beautiful, by the way. But that's what they were doing. So when you're dealing with stuff like that, it's the time that makes the generational wealth trust so powerful, is that you have all these years of compounding, and compounding is amazing, right? So you can start with a ridiculously small amount of money, and in the generational wealth trust, 60 years later, that could be millions of dollars, right? And that you could start with a couple thousand and have that going on. So that's the difference. With the asset protection trust, there are already assets in place, and now you just want really serious protection that nobody can take it from you, but you're going to be using it. And so then there are different jurisdictions that we choose depending on the level of the assets, right? So you have 100 million, ultra high net worth individual, you got 100 million in assets that you want to place. Not that's all you're worth, right? That's what you want to place. We would use a different, offshore location for that 100 million than we would for 10 million, than we would for 1 million, right? So that's only one component. What it is that you plan to do, what industry you're in, where it is that you want to live, where it is you want to retire, what kind of tax structure you want to look at. All of those things would factor into whether we put your trust in Hong Kong, whether we put your trust in Singapore, whether we put your trust in Mauritius, whether we put your trust in Nevis, whether we put your trust in the Cook Island. Like all of that stuff is personal to what it is that you want to achieve in life. So that's the difference between the generational wealth trust and the asset protection trust. We do way more generational wealth because there's way more people that have access to generational wealth planning, right? Like the amount of people in the United States that make over, well, at least in my community, that make over 6 figures is 6%, right? So, and that doesn't mean that they have that money. They can be broke paycheck to paycheck, making $100,000 a year, right? So, but that just lets you know that pool of people is less than 6%. Like the person who can call up and be like, I got $1 million I want to deploy into a trust. We're talking what, 2%, 3% at that point, right? So most people are like, look, I just don't want my kids to struggle. Can we do that? Can I give you $5,000 and in 30 years my kids don't have to struggle? Can we do that? And the answer is yes, we can. So that's what the generational wealth trusts are for. And the reason why they're offshore trusts is so they're protected from you, That's why. So they're protected from you, and not on the level of like, well, we don't want you to reach into the bank account and take the money out and like not that. That you can do that wherever. It's protected from you in the sense of, what if the mailman is delivering mail and there's ice on your stoop? The mailman slips on the ice and breaks their leg, and then they sue you for not salting your stoop, right? That's not necessarily your fault. There's a bit of negligence there that, yeah, you should have cleared your stoop, but it's not necessarily. What if you're on vacation? We actually had this happen, right? What if you're on vacation and you couldn't physically, salt your steps in time, and then someone falls down the steps, falls on the ice, and sues you, right? So we had a client that happened to, and so now what? Now your children should lose their inheritance because you forgot to pay somebody to salt your steps while you were in Jamaica? No, right? So if you lose that lawsuit and your stuff is offshore in a trust, no local judge can really get to it. They can order you to bring it back, they can all of that stuff, but your trustee is just going to say no. You're going to comply with the court order always. But your trustee, the way that your trust is written, the trustee is going to swear you in and under oath ask you if you've been compelled by a court or if you're under duress or whatever, and they're just going to say no. So every time, the court orders you to go to that trust and get whatever, you're going to do it. You're going to go to the trust and ask for whatever, and the trustee's going to say, no, this is for your kids. I'm not giving it to you. What's the judge going to do? Get in a plane and fly to a country where he has no power and do what? Right? Can't file the judgment in that country if it's strategic, right? If you pick the right country where they won't respect the foreign judgment, can't file the judgment in that country. You have no legal standing to even sue in that country. Right? So that's why it keeps that safe, because it's not for you. It's legitimately not for you. So if anybody tries to get at it, a creditor, a judge, or whoever tries to get at it, they can't touch it because you can't touch it. Right? That's what non-grantor status means. Right? So that's the reason why we use offshore trusts for that, to make sure that the legacy is safe no matter what happens to you. It's safe. No matter if you get in a car accident, no matter if it's your fault. If you're texting on your phone and you hit somebody's child, it's your fault. You're found liable, and maybe there's even a criminal negligence in there or something, but you're found liable, and it is your fault. Should your children have to pay for that? Right? So that's the whole point of the protection, is no matter what, even if you're wrong, the inheritance is safe. Right? So that's super important when you're trying to build generational wealth. You don't want it to be all for nothing. So yeah, I get that a lot. Can't you just do a trust at home? Like, can't you just do a domestic trust? Essentially, you can, but a judge can just snatch it away from you. It's in his jurisdiction. He can set your trust aside. How many for the year? You mean our 100 generational wealth trusts pledge for this year? We're at 4, and today I'm onboarding number 5. So I guess we could say we're at 5. We're at 5 because he paid, so we're onboarding him after payment. So I guess technically we are at 5. So we're at 5 of the 100 for this year. What number are you going to be? Can you see? Yes, you can see the house that's included in the end of year. Let me get it for you. Quick share. There. This is the 3D rendering of the house that's included in the end of year special. It is a 2-bedroom house with an office. The office is literally the same size as the master bedroom and has a full bath, or the space of a full bath. So if it's an office, you can make it a half bath with like a toilet and a urinal. If not, then you can make it a full bath with like a shower. So you could utilize it as a 3-bedroom if you want, but then you lose the office, obviously. it's actually bigger than 1,600 square feet. So it's approximately 1,600 square feet, but it's actually closer to 17. You would get a eighth of an acre. So you'd have a backyard, you'd have a front yard, all of that. And so yeah, that is the house that comes with the end of year special. You can't see it. That's because you are on YouTube. Oh, well, maybe I can green screen it on YouTube. You're not going to see it very well, though, even if I am able to get it up for you. That's the one thing. The best picture stuff is definitely TikTok. Definitely. Beyond a doubt. Even the way I'm able to like look through the pictures is better on TikTok. Like this is gonna take me forever to find the picture you guys want to see here. All right, give me just a second. See if I can grab it here. Mm-mm. Yeah, YouTube is difficult. See how fast I got that up on TikTok? See how long it's taking me on YouTube? I need YouTube to upgrade its user interface, man. Let's see here. Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, no, I can't get it up on YouTube, unfortunately. Sorry, guys. If you come over to the TikTok stream, though, you'll be able to see it. Two stories. Yep, two stories. There is a single story version. We had a few people pop up with like mobility issues, and the thing is that this is all completely priced out. That's why it's an end of year special. So we worked with our suppliers, or in China, who supply our building materials and all of that, and so we priced everything out down to the square meter, right, to be able to get you guys the best price. So then we had the people like, hey, I want to retire. I'm really not trying to go up steps like that. What can we do? And so for those people, we figured something out. And so yes, you can get a rancher, but if you get a rancher, obviously all of that space that's on two floors is now on one floor. So your backyard is extremely restricted now, and your front yard is as well. There's still enough space for like a small pool if you wanted to add that later, but you lose a lot of space. Whereas if you get the two stories, you get the same floor space, but in a smaller footprint because half of the floor space is just on top of the other, right? So now it doubles your outside, right? So now you got a decent backyard and you got a decent front yard on the eighth of an acre. So that's the difference. But yes, you can get a house with no stairs, especially if it's like a mobility issue thing and all that. We get it. So there is an option that doesn't change the price point or anything like that, where we can build the house essentially as a rancher. Can you buy more land? One person can, because there's three plots left. So one person could essentially take two plots. Of course, it's an upgrade in price, but one person could take two plots. But at that point, there wouldn't, like the next person, there's only one plot left. So there wouldn't be space next to it for them to be able to take two lots as well. So there's one person could decide to double their land, yes. Does that happen often? Yeah, it does actually. Because sometimes people want like really extravagant like backyards, and so they'll actually make a backyard that's the entire size of a plot of land. So they'll have their plot, and they'll build whatever they're going to build, and then they'll build it on the edge of the property line, and then they'll buy the property next to it. So then on the beginning of the next property line actually starts their backyard, and then they got water effects and barbecue pits and all of that stuff in the backyard, and do it up big. So yeah, you can do that. Yeah, we did one where the backyard was like a massive pool, and then what was it? It was 2 bedroom. There were two excuse me. There were two pool houses on either side of the pool that were 2 bedroom, 2 bath, or 2 bedroom, 2.5 bath. And then they Airbnb the pool houses, and then they put a wall up, right? So they built their house on the opposite side of their plot, and they had a bit of a backyard, and then they had a wall on the end of that property, boundary, and then there's another title deed for the next property over. So on the other side of the wall was now this massive pool and pool houses on either side of it, and like a barbecue pit and all that stuff, right? And so when you enter the side of the property, you actually came in on the property line, and there was like an indentation, and that was like the garage. So you open the garage door, you park in the garage, and when you're in the garage, on the two sides of the garage, there's like a gate here and a gate here. And this gate would take you around to the actual house where they lived, and this gate would take you to the Airbnb. So there was actually like a privacy wall up between. So it was actually a pretty cool build. It was smart. Yeah. Yeah, it's just an upgrade. Like you could add those kind of things on too, because your end of year special would just be the initial plot with the building of the house and all that. You can add on an additional project, and put up a pool, and all of that stuff. We don't have a program for that, but most of our clients finance it through their own means. So any client that's using financing typically finances it through their bank, or through, sometimes a lot of people actually use retirement funds, but you can finance it any old way that you have access to. But we don't have financing access yet. We will soon. We're working something out locally. The issue is that typically the United States has better interest rates globally. That's not just better than Kenya. Like if you went to like Spain, the interest rate that a bank would give you, you would look at them like they were crazy. Because typically the countries around the world have like double digit, high, well, to us is considered higher, double digit interest rate for like mortgage type things. Like they're paying like credit card interest rates for mortgages, whereas like we're looking at like 8, 9, 10 for a mortgage, because it's a mortgage. Like, yeah, a credit card might be 27.99 or something, but we're not expecting to see no 27.99 on a mortgage, right? Whereas the rest of the world, they do see interest rates like that on mortgages. So typically it's better to get your funding, if you're American, especially in America. And then on top of that, you have the recourse of bankruptcy in America as well. So if something goes wrong, then the bankruptcy court, that's what it's there for, right? And so those courts don't exist everywhere in the world. And our clients are pretty strategic. So our clients typically prefer U.S. financing, and then if everything goes right, great. If something goes wrong, bankruptcy, and that's it. And they keep it moving. Yeah, I mean, and the application process is more stringent as well, right? Because you're coming in from another country, we have to do your first, so you have to be locked into it. Number one, you got to be like ready to rock. Once we get your immigration permits and all of that, then it would be a situation where the bank would start asking about your income like abroad, right? And so they would probably want to see 6 months of bank statements from, the U.S. They might need an employer letter or a letter from your company, and then they might even need you to bank with them for 6 months, right? Before they, because you're a foreign, like you can just go home, right? So it's a risk. And so, even if you do lean into that, it's a much more involved process because you are a much greater risk. Oh yeah, people do it all the time. There was a story in the local news maybe 2 3 months ago, like an Arab guy, I forget which country, but he did it like a couple 100 million. It wasn't like small loans. Like he had a bunch of loans for like big housing development projects or whatever, and just like went back to the UAE or wherever he came from, and that was that. You know what I mean? Obviously, the properties are there, and they can go like auction the properties, but they're like half built, commercial buildings. You know what I mean? So they're definitely not going to get the same money back. Maybe, I mean, if it's as honest as it could be, then maybe you could do that. Yeah, maybe you could have somebody come in and like finish the project and all of that. But if it's not, like if he knew he was going to do this from the jump and like the concrete isn't sound, you know what I mean? Like, because you can mix in too much sand, you can make the concrete weak to like save money and all of that stuff and like scam the whole thing. So, that you'd have to pay for like testing, concrete testing and all of that to make sure that the frames are even done right. That's why we just build, because a lot of people are like, oh, can I just buy a house? You can, but you have no idea what you're actually buying. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you would have to pay additional money to actually have a structural engineer come in and test like the structure of the home before you buy it, or you can just build things to your own specifications. Yeah, I know. I still have this crazy cough, right? I went to the doctor a couple of days ago, and they were like, the cough is productive, and there's nothing crazy going on in my lungs. Like my lungs are clear and all that. So they're like, you got an allergy. You got to figure out what it is. So I guess this is the Kenyan version of ragweed season. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What things are missing? Often hot water is missing, right? Often hot water is not a feature that local builders build into the house. When there is hot water, it's a solar hot water heater. So when it's a cloudy day, you can't take a hot shower. When it's nighttime, you can't take a hot shower. If you wake up early, like I do, right? Like I wake up before the sun comes up, and I get all this ready, and I typically go live when the sun comes up, right? So if I had a solar hot water heater, I wouldn't be able to take a hot shower when I woke up before I do this live, right? So those are the type of things that people like run into. Typically, mosquito nets are not standard. Like people are okay with like bugs and flies and mosquitoes and whatever like flying through their house. We're typically not okay with that, right? So what ends up happening, and we see this a lot, like sometimes it's the hard head make the soft behind factor, right? So sometimes we'll see people just like disregard or think like, oh, you just want the money for yourself. Like, I'm not waiting to build a house. I'm just going to go buy one. And then they call us 6 months down the road, because we have a law firm, thinking they can sue somebody, which they cannot, and their toilet was a hole in the ground. It could flush, but it was a hole that you squat over, because people prefer those toilets out here locally, right? So they had a hole in the ground for the toilets. They had no mosquito nets at all. They were told there's hot water, but it was solar hot water. So 50% of the time, the hot water ain't hot because it's a cloudy day, or it's nighttime. You know what I mean? A lot of people like to take a hot shower before bed or whatever. So by the time you're ready to take that shower, the water doesn't cool down, right? And all of that, and they're just utterly miserable and utterly unhappy when they could have had everything they wanted for less money. They just had to wait 9 months for us to build it. And so it happens where, they'll call us back. We want you to now sell the house that we bought and build us, the other. And then maybe by then the pricing is different too, right? So that recently happened when Trump first started his trade war stuff. It changed the prices of building materials everywhere, because it changed the pricing of importing and exporting with all the tariff war nonsense. So we had people who were like waiting, and then they came back and was like, all right, let's build now. And a lot of them were business people, so that really sucks, because you got a business bottom line you're looking at. You want to make a certain profit. And so they're like, well, let's go. And I'm like, yep, price of concrete just doubled. Now what do you want? You know what I mean? Like, what do you want to do? And so it ended up costing them a lot more. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just par for the course. If you can learn the easy way and then execute, you'll definitely, be more cost effective. But some people really do need to learn the hard way. Like, that's just the way their brain works. So, and that's okay. It just costs more, but it's only money. It's okay. So either way, you'll get it together eventually. Hey, Mumo, what's going on? How's Texas? Oh, I think you actually sent some. Aha. Nice, nice. Very, very nice. I'm good. Let me know how you're feeling about Benin. It's cold today, really. Ooh. We're thinking about, if not expanding, like, we're thinking about expanding. Um, our partner is thinking about like licensing her system, which that's cool too. But we're actually thinking about like expanding. Um, Benin is a place that maybe we would consider. We're still looking. There's some places that we're not considering at all, because the social capital it takes to get involved there would cost us 4 or 5 years. So there are some places that just don't make sense. Um, but you know, and then the language barrier of the francophone countries are an issue in and of itself as well. But all right, sounds good. Sounds good. We're also looking at Faso, so just how straightforward they are. And the year special is 185,000. Yep. No, not just for the house, for everything. But yes, I know it feels like you're getting everything for free and you're paying for the house. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's for everything. What's everything again? It's your immigration package, it's your tax package, and all your legal compliance. Our law firm will take care of all of that. It's an eighth of an acre of land, so your standard 50 by 100 plot of land. We're building you a greater than 1,600 square foot 2-story home. On that land, we're registering a trust that will handle all the finances and funding and all of that stuff for all your property and assets and whatnot. and then really the creme de la creme is the bond ladder. So you get a full bond ladder that will end up paying you monthly income passively for the next 10 years. And the target on that has been 50,000 since we started it. No one has been paid 50,000 a month, right? Everybody gets paid more than 50,000 a month on the bond ladder. It is. It's enough to retire because of where the house is. The house is at Deaney Beach. The land is in Deaney Beach. So the cost of living there once you own a home is enough that if you're like single or whatever, or maybe you have one kid, 50,000 is should definitely be enough, unless you're like splurging or whatever. If you have a bougier lifestyle or whatever, you can adjust the amount in the bond. It's going to cost more, but you can adjust the amount in the bond. But the base amount is the 50,000. Yeah, 50,000 a month. Yep. That again, that's the base, right? So like our last bond ladder, um, in what is it, February and August, they actually get like 92,000 because that's the infrastructure bond that pays 18.46%. So that it's the same money. Each ladder of the bond has the exact same amount of money in it. But depending on the coupon rate of the bond, like the interest rate that they're paying you, will change how much money you get that month. What's the lowest? The lowest that anybody got net is 54,000. And it's those same people in January and July, they get 54,000, which is their lowest payment. Then the very next month, they almost get double that, which kind of makes up for it. And then all the other months, it's between like 60 and 75. So every month is above 50. And that's been consistent across the bond ladders the entire time that we've been doing it. However, obviously, right, that those interest rates won't stick, right? Like if we went and did a bond ladder in Mauritius right now, since Mauritius is like squared away, it's it's technically the only African country that's completely self-sufficient, right? So they're like developed already, right? They're not doing this transfer Kenya's doing from developing to developed. They're essentially developed, right? And because of that, if you go look at their bond ladders, it's like 6%, which is what you would be looking at in America too, right? So because we're in that sweet spot where where it's moving from developing to developed, right? That's why we're getting these giant interest rates, which is amazing for us while they last. But we estimate it won't last more than 2 years, 2 more years. No, 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 no. Once you have the bond for the maturity of the bond, so if you got a 20-year bond, you have that interest rate for 20 years. So it doesn't matter what happens to new interest rates, that doesn't affect your old one. That's why they're getting different amounts of money every month, right? If the new interest rates could affect the bond, they would get the exact same amount of money every month, and it would fluctuate up and down depending on the bond rates. But that's why every month they're getting paid something different because they have a bond with a different interest rate. I could show you, but you'd have to come to TikTok. Yeah, I could put it up, but you wouldn't see it on that live stream because I can't change the background or put up a picture in like a Facebook live stream or a YouTube. And the YouTube I can do a green screen thing, but it's hard to see. So if you come to our TikTok stream, you'll be able to see that. I can put it up for you if you want. No, there's no additional cost to that. That's part of the end of year package. Yeah, it's just part of the package. Yeah, it's supposed to be. It was designed to be super easy, and we often kind of get the well, what am I going to do for money question. So we set it up for people who like, look, I want to leave. I'm not going to have a job after I leave though. So what am I going to do for money? And then this kind of answers that. So it's like, oh, all right, well, we'll get you passive income for the next 20 years. And that's what you'll do for money, right? Now, the vast majority, I would say 90%, are still doing something, like there's some kind of side hustle, or they got a remote job, or they're doing something online, or like whatever. They're still kind of doing something to make a little bit more money, but it is nice to know that like your basic needs are covered. You know what I mean? So even if you have a bad month, you get fired, you get whatever, you're good. Like your basic needs are still covered. So, and how good you are is definitely going to depend on your own level of discipline. Like if you're out there clubbing it every night and making it rain and popping bottles and all of that, then no matter how much money you make, you can mess yourself up. But we're going to set you up for success. At least we're not going to set you up for failure. The rest is on you. How often does that happen? Often, if we see it, because not everybody reports their behavior to us, obviously. But if we see it, we'll try to intervene a little bit. But it does happen. It does happen often. Because a lot of times, people have never been in the position that this relocation puts them in, right? So you got a lot of people, lower middle class, even sometimes lower class, right? And now all of a sudden they're in the top 10%, like that, right? So everything has changed. Access has changed. Everything has changed. But it's really easy to burn through your money if you're not, acting like a normal human being, right? And so you do see that sometimes, however, where like people have never had that level of access, they've never existed on, that social class before, and now they essentially have millions at their disposal, right? But you can spend 100 million in a week. If you ain't got no discipline, you can do it. And so at the club every night, buying everybody shots. The women are really, really interested in you, or the men. It doesn't matter either way. Everybody's really interested in you. You're a very interesting person, and, and so yeah, it does happen quite a bit. If we can see it and we can intervene, typically we can shake people back into sense. But a lot of people end up kind of hitting rock bottom and then having to recover from there, and then they kind of get their head about them, especially single people, because you're going to have more interest in you. Even if you're a woman, you're going to have more interest in you than you've had before, because even though you've essentially joined a new social class, you don't know how to be part of that social class. You're still hanging out with the former social class. So you're giving access to people who are seeing you like one way, until you kind of get out of that and get a peer group of people who are on the same level as you, and then that kind of fades away. But yeah, we see it a lot. We see it a lot. Well, that's personal behavior. You know what I mean? Like I said, if we see it and we can intervene, we'll say something. Why wouldn't we? But not everybody calls us and, you know what? I'm, going on 30 dates a week and I'm at the bar every night. Just wanted to let you know, it's personal behavior. So if we don't see it, then, we just hope they snap out of it quickly enough. Well, yeah, so that's part of the beauty of the bond ladder. If you have the bond ladder, you can recover, right? Because you got money coming in for a decade every month. You know what I mean? So you got guaranteed passive income, so you can like recover. Folks that don't do bond ladders and still go a little crazy, they do risk putting themselves in a position where they fail the entire relocation, because they were working off of a lump sum, and then they decided to go wild and go partying every night on this lump sum, they may screw themselves up permanently. Yeah, yeah. That's why we really, really, really like the bond ladders. And we, and a lot of people, like some people, you can kind of tell where their mentality is. Because some people, why would I take my lump sum of money, buy these bonds, and then get a smaller monthly income, right? Even though the lump sum of money is still protected and they're getting that back, their mindset is off, right? Or not, if they're enterprising and they have a history of building solid businesses and like they got their head on straight, then yeah, then maybe it does make sense for them to take their lump sum and go expand their business empire, and like they know how to do that, and fine. But a lot of relocatees, that's not their background. You know what I mean? And so they don't know how to do that. And so it makes more sense to be like, let me be secure for the next 10, 20 years while I learn how this place works, and while I gain dual citizenship, right? Like it makes a heck of a lot more sense to just be cool and learn over the time it takes you to get dual citizenship, and then you get dual citizenship, you go do whatever you want, right? Um, so mindset matters, and it's not a universal answer. Like somebody who doesn't want a ladder doesn't mean they have the wrong mindset. Just it's a totality of the circumstances. How many bedrooms? It's 2 bedrooms, 3.5 bath. But there's a library that's literally the exact same size as the master bedroom, and it's actually directly beneath the master bedroom on the first floor. So some people have been like, I don't want no library. That's my third bedroom because it has a bathroom, in suite, and all of that. So the library is designed, or well, the library or the office is designed. If it's an office, it's designed so that people can enter your office from outside the house and like have a meeting with you, and then like go to the bathroom without entering your home. So they can enter the office from a door that's on the front of the office, and they can sit down at your desk and do whatever meeting they had to do with you, and like around the corner is a bathroom. And so like on the other side of the bathroom door there would actually be an exterior door, like a steel security door that actually led into your house, right? So people could come and do business with you without entering your home, right? So they're at your house, but they don't have to enter your house. Now, if you're not a business person and you don't need the office, it has that bathroom there, and that bathroom is the same size as your master bathroom, so it can take a shower and all of that stuff, whatever. So you could turn it into a 3 bedroom instead, and then you would have 3 bedroom, 3.5 bath. What would you see if you went through the security? Yeah. Okay. So if you open that door, like when you're doing business in the office, if you open that door, you would walk through it and see your kitchen. Yeah. So it'd be like on the border of like your kitchen and your dining room. Yeah, we typically make that door like a soundproof door, so that if you guys are doing, like, if the kids are yelling around and running and screaming in the house and you got a business meeting happening in the office, they don't hear that. What about utilities? The only utility that you would have is possibly electric, and then your luxury utilities like internet and Netflix, like that type of stuff. But electric would be the only major utility you would have, because you have your own water, you have your own well, right? So you have a borehole. So it's like an electric pump well. So it's not like you're out there pulling water out of buckets, right? So you have your own water. You have a biodigester, so you have like your own sewer system that you don't have to pay for. You can upgrade to be off grid and have like a solar backup, so you don't necessarily have to have electric either. But if you do have electric, That's essentially it. That's why the house, like having the house, is an important part of making the cost of living work. Because if you're paying rent, then the 50,000 a month might not be enough. But if you already have your own house, then the 50,000 a month is enough, right? And like with money left over type of thing, So that's the difference. Makes sense. All right, that's good. That's good. Happy it. It's cutting through to you. Where is it? It's in Deanny Beach. So it's Deanny Beach is like a tourist area. So a lot of our Airbnb people come out here because you can make money in U.S. dollars, right? Which is important to them. So you be in that area. So if you ever decide to buy a new house, or you're going to get a place in Nairobi or something like that, you would actually have a beach house that you could Airbnb in an area that's known for that. So people would come in expecting to pay like USA rates for that Airbnb versus any kind of local discount or something like that. So it's a solid area the whole way around. Crime rate, Google it, but last time I Googled it, it was less than 1% for violent crime. If you leave your wallet on a table in a restaurant, you come back an hour later, it won't be there. But like violent crime, like someone, putting their hands on you or anything like that, less than 1%. It's one of the reasons why we chose to raise our son here. Cities are cities. No matter where you live in the world, the city gonna have violent crime. You can. That's an interesting question. You can be the trustee, but that was the wrong question to ask, right? It's not can you be the trustee, it's should you be, right? And so especially if you're American, because Americans are taxed based on their passport, right? Federally anyway, not based on their location. Now, state-wise, you're typically taxed based on your location, but federally, you're taxed based on your passport. So if you're American, you definitely want the trust to be non-grantor, which means that you are not the trustee. You could be the beneficiary and it still be non-grantor, right? But you definitely cannot be the trustee. And so if you are, there's a ton of additional like filings and all that stuff that you have to do with the IRS and blah 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 blah. And if you're not, you don't. Right? You want to know more about that, either ask your tax professional or just go to irs.gov and type into the search bar up in the corner non-grantor trust, right? And see what it says about that, right? So it's not can you be the trustee, because of course you can. It's should you be the trustee, right? Some people, it does make sense. Like it's okay because of the setup they have at home. They have to do so much filings anyway. It doesn't matter the extra filings, and the F bar and the FinCEN and all of these extra reports that you have to do. None of that essentially matters anymore if you already have like a C corp and you're doing massive amounts of filings anyway, and then you're going to have this C corp own at least 10% of your Kenyan corp so that you can have the tax-free distributions from Kenya to America. Like there's all kinds of strategies that you can put in place. So depending on what you're doing at home, it might be okay for it to be a grantor trust, and you just have to deal with the tax implications of that. But those tax implications aren't detrimental to you because of your particular situation versus most people. The non-grantor trust is what they're looking for, because if it's grantor, the tax burden and the filing burden is extreme on them. So it just depends on who you are and what you got going on. But yeah, let's try to stay away from the canned questions, because canned questions will get you jammed up. Start asking should questions. Yeah, hello. How's it going? I feel like I missed something on the TikTok side. If somebody sent me a message and I didn't answer you, it's way up the chain. I'm not seeing it. So if you send me a message I didn't answer, you just go ahead and send another one. You guys don't. I don't think you see everything I see. Like I see like all the likes and I see who joined and I see all of that. So my feed moves up faster than your feed. So you might still be able to see your question because you're not seeing who joined and who liked and who sent this and who sent that and all of that stuff and little, you know, I get little like orders like invite this person to be a guest and tell your people to tap the screen and like so TikTok shows me a lot more as the host than it shows you. So if I haven't answered your question, I can't see it anymore or it's too far up for me. So just ask it again. I saw something pop up though. I'm sorry I missed it. Uh, eh, I'd say tropical. It's on the equator. So like Jamaica's not on the equator. You know what I mean? So but it's that type of vibe. But it's definitely closer to the sun because it is on the equator. What changes the temperature and all that stuff here is typically elevation. So I'm at ocean level. So I'm getting, the heat. I'm getting the tropicality of it all, right? But I can go half an hour inland, still be able to see the ocean because it's an elevation. Like when I go inland, I'm going up a mountain. So I can go live in a place called Quale and be at the top of the mountain and it's 20 degrees cooler. But I can still see the ocean and it only takes me 20 minutes to drive there, right? So, depending on what kind of temperature you like, it's just going to be an elevation game. Like Nairobi is relatively cold compared to this. It's still like 70 degrees. It ain't cold, cold. You know what I mean? At night, it might be 65, but because of the elevation at night, like people wear coats, stuff like that. Whereas down here, it's rare for you to see people in coats. We're in shorts and tank tops and you know bikinis. You'll see people in bikinis and cover ups. It's like Miami. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with both. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I'm good with snow and all of that stuff. I have family from the Caribbean though, so I'm also good with the tropical. So yeah, I'm pretty good with both. Not my wife though is not good with the cold. My son is though, even though he hasn't really experienced it. He's experienced like Nairobi cold, but everywhere we take him is fairly warm. So I think the coldest he experienced was China, but we were there in the summer, so even then it wasn't cold. So we'll see what he does when he experiences his first snow. How old is he? He's 21 months. You think so? he he has what? He has he has 9 stamps on his passport already. He has a 10-year visa, a 10-year Chinese visa. He's been to Seychelles. He's been to Mauritius. He's been to Qatar. He's been to Hong Kong. Where else has he gone? He's been to London. Where are we at? 6. He's been to Ethiopia. Um, Well, he hasn't been to America yet, but he has a U.S. passport. He can go whenever he wants. Where else has he been? Oh, the Maldives. Um, I guess that's it. No, Uganda. Uganda. So yeah, no, the 21 months don't mean nothing. He's mobile. You gotta put your generational wealth plan together. That's all. Have their trust paid for them, not for you, for them. Yeah, yeah. No, no. I mean, we love China. Hey, hey, how's it going? All is good. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we'll be back there in like April. Man, we got to keep the relations good, right? I mean, if we don't keep the relations good, then we can't offer you specials like this. Like these specials are only um, available and allowable because we're able to negotiate great prices on the tiles and the windows and the doors and the and the roofing materials and all that. All of that comes from our relationship directly with Chinese factories and Chinese vendors and all that. So we're typically in China at least once a year. What were we doing in the Seychelles? Setting up someone's trust fund. Same thing as Mauritius. Same thing as Hong Kong. That's typically what we're doing over there. China, not so much. Hong Kong, yes, which is a part of China, but it's an SAR. But we don't really do trust in China. It's just the laws. You want the laws to work out for you. Like you want them to work for you really, really well. Yeah, you can have niche locations. Like if you're doing like an IP firm or you're doing some sort of IP protection, then like South Africa is really good for that. It's not good for like your typical stuff, right? So there are niche situations where you would go to a country that you wouldn't typically go to because they have some sort of overwhelmingly beneficial niche law or niche rule. Whatever you're best at. People ask that all the time. Whatever you're best at. There's no one business that like foreigners can do and all that stuff. Whatever you know how to do, that's what you should do. If you don't know how to do something, then you should be learning something. You shouldn't even be thinking about opening a business. Go learn something and then open a business after you've learned it. Ah, it sounds like you have an excuse for every solution. Yeah, that might not work out too well for you. YouTube is free. You can learn whatever you want. But you can find an excuse, though. Might not like the way your life turns out, but you're welcome to continue finding excuses. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's 100%. Um, you know, self accountability for the most part. As far as getting started is concerned, if you're starting something, it's absolutely on you. Yeah, then it becomes just a waste of time. Like you're wasting your breath at that point because it's not benefiting you, your family. You're not saving your family, or you know what I mean, making any money or anything like that. Just talking to somebody else to figure out all the reasons they can't, do what the person next to them is obviously doing. So just got to let them walk their journey. They're not wrong for it. You know what I mean? You can live any way you want to live. It doesn't make you wrong or anything like that, but it does make it a waste of my time to be discussing it with you. So I'm not going to waste my time. You have a point. You're absolutely correct. For some people, they may see their time as not even being valuable. You know, for me, my corporate hourly rate's $500 an hour. You're wasting my time. I know how valuable it is. But there are some people who, they spend 12 hours a day playing PlayStation, and it doesn't mean anything to them. There's no value to their time, right? I do that. That's $6,000 of my time. You know, probably more now. I haven't upped my rate in years, so probably more like $12,000 of my time. Well, no, you know what it is. Those who say they can, and those who say they can't, are correct. So what ends up happening is, um, excuse or no excuse, if it's their excuse, it's valid, right? That's just all there is to it. So if that's their mindset, it's valid, and there's no need for you to engage any further, unless it's your job. Like unless you're like a psychologist or something, you know what I mean, and it's your job to try and change their mindset. But then that means that they came to you for that. So that means they volunteered for a mindset shift from you, right? And so now you're not wasting time anymore. Now you're going to work. That's a whole different thing. But different people are just different people. Stop fighting it. Stop expecting everybody to be like you. You know, talk to your people, and that's it. That's all you got time for. It's also safer to deal with people that you like understand, people who like think like you. Way safer. That's why different classes of people you can't gain access to. It's not necessarily because they're stuck up. It's because people are unpredictable individually. As groups, we're very predictable. Groups of people are extraordinarily predictable. But individually, we're unpredictable. And so if you don't understand someone's moral basis, someone's values, someone's ethics, then it's a dangerous situation for you, because you don't know what they will or won't do, right? So it's one of those, like my daddy used to say, you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. And it's one of those situations we used to see. Thank goodness we don't see this anymore, but we see this thing back in like the early 2000s where people would they would come to another country talking about they got to do a hood check-in, and so they go like the worst places in the country, and then they start talking about like getting robbed and bribery and corruption and all this nonsense when they literally took themselves from their and it wasn't just the United States, the UK, the Brits were doing it too, but they took themselves from their country into a completely unknown country and decided that the first stop was to go to the most impoverished, worst parts, highest criminality parts of that country and check in. Of course you got robbed, like of course it was ridiculous, but sometimes people, their mentality is just off. So like I said, thankfully we don't see that anymore. It was like a trend or something. I don't know what the hell that was, But people would be doing these ridiculous things and then complaining when they got ridiculous results. So yeah, pretty wild, pretty wild. Mindset matters a lot. And if someone's not ready, then they're just not ready. Just accept it and move on. Yeah, I feel like every family has one of those. I feel like there's someone in every family that has one of those. So yeah, I got one too. And if you think your family doesn't have one of those, you might be it. It's one of those situations. Well, no, you know why? Because sometimes they think they're being analytical, right? So sometimes they don't realize that they're actually looking for problems in every solution instead of solutions from every problem. Sometimes they think it's like due diligence. Like they think, that they're being analytical and that they're like being safe. But what ends up happening with them is it's always analysis paralysis. They never do anything. All they do is talk and bring up weird hypothetical problems that don't really exist, and they think they're being analytical, but really they're just being paralyzed by their analysis, and unfortunately they may have the confidence of really thinking that they are being analytical and that they are being kind of savvy, and folks can misinterpret that confidence for like expertise. So now the negativity is actually spreading, where people who were ready to like actually do something and stop talking about it and being about it can be kind of shaken off of their square by that having that person around, which is why you just excise them as quickly as possible and keep it moving. Well, right, right. It's that old saying of it's really hard to win an argument with a smart person. It's impossible to win an argument with a stupid person, right? Because they just think they're right. They're right. They're with their whole chest, confident as hell, loud and wrong, right? And so, unfortunately, people who are not, being arrogant and they're not assuming they know it all, when they see that the confidence of ignorance, sometimes they fall for it and like, oh, well, he really seems to know what he's talking about. He's saying it with his whole chest. Maybe he's right, just because they don't know anything at all. And so that's why you just excise them. It doesn't make sense to stand in the town square and go back and forth with them, because it's not gonna benefit you in any way, and it's probably not gonna benefit them in any way. And the worst case scenario is that it disenfranchises onlookers. So it's better to just deal with professional engagement and go from there. The problem is the internet has given everyone a platform, professional or not. So now there are people who are anything but professional, and they also have all the time in the world. Like, you're not going to see me live again for the rest of the day, right? I got work to do, right? And this is not my job. That's why I never have links up for you to buy anything. Like, this isn't my job. This is a public service, right? So real people who are doing real work cannot sit on TikTok for 12 hours a day, unless TikTok is your job, right? And so the problem is the frauds can. They don't have a real job. Their job is to trick you into thinking that they're experts, right? So they can literally sit and have lives and have debates and have diaspora wars and have all kinds of nonsense for 12, 14, 16 hours a day, right? There are times when I'll turn on my phone to come live to do this in the morning, and the person who was having some ridiculous debate yesterday is the first thing that pops up in the FYP, and it's the same people. They've literally been there for 24 hours yelling, fighting, and arguing about the same thing, right? So like that's your number one red flag that, like, wait a minute, you can't be saying that you're building something serious, yet you have the time to be on social media for 12 hours a day. It's no way. It's not possible, right? So, you want to, use a little bit of common sense with your critical eye to see who's who. But the issue is they can be the loudest because they're unemployed, right? They have nothing to do but sit on social media and see if they get, paid, from their YouTube lives, or if they can get paid from social in some way, shape, or form, or get people to send them money from social in some way, shape, or form, where they're working 12, 16 hours a day on social media. That's the job, right? So just use a critical eye with the so-called experts who are really not experts at all. They're actually pretty easy to spot once you start using your critical eye. So yeah, I think it's a net negative, and maybe that's because I come from before internet. You know what I mean? Like when I did my first business, there was no internet. There were no websites, at least not that I knew of. You know what I mean? So it might have been there, but it hadn't proliferated yet. I remember the big thing, like when I had my first business, the big thing was like Flash. They were trying to make Flash work on mobile phones, and they couldn't get it right. And then all of a sudden, like Android got it right, and then you still couldn't do Flash on the other mobile phones for like years. And then even the Flash that was on Android was kind of wonky, and so they ended up getting rid of it. And you know what I mean? So that's how far back we're going. We're like video hadn't made it to web browsers yet, and all of that. So yeah, I think I had a 56K modem, so it dialed up in AOL and all of that stuff. So I go back to before the internet, when you had to be an actual expert and put in the work in order to have a voice, not just say whatever you pull from your backside that day and pretend that you were an expert. So for me, the internet has definitely been a net negative. There's way too many ridiculous voices out there that really shouldn't have a platform at all. And they're actually using concentration. It's actually the same theory as a concentration camp. If I say it long enough and loud enough, you'll just believe it. So that's actually the theory that they're utilizing, is they have the time to sit on live all day and say it loud enough and long enough, and they defraud a lot of people. That's what happened with Clubhouse. You guys remember Clubhouse? Clubhouse had the ability to be really, really, really good, and it ended up defrauding most of the people who were there. I don't even know if it operates anymore. So yeah, critical eye, guys, critical eye. Especially you guys who are like focused on generational wealth. Don't let some BS destroy your generational wealth. Right? Use a legitimate professional. I can't tell you how many times I see like a TikTok video where the first thing out of their mouth is, "Oh, this is this is how the rich people do it. I own a trust, and my trust owns my cars and my houses." Immediate red flag. Immediate red flag. Why would you put your car in the trust? If you get into a car accident, what does that person have access to? Your entire trust, because the trust owns the car. Like, no professional would tell you to put the car in the trust unless it's an antique car that's an asset that does not drive, like it's in a showroom somewhere, in a museum somewhere. That's different. Then it's essentially art. It's an antique at that point. But the car you drive every day, you are an idiot if you have that car in your trust. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's a depreciating asset. It adds no value to the trust, and the only possible thing that can happen is that car gets into an accident, they sue you, the car insurance doesn't cover it all, and now they have access to your entire trust. The dumbest thing in the world, right? And a little bit of critical thinking would uncover that, right? But there are thousands of videos that start just like that. I built my empire the way rich people do. Here's my trust, and my cars and my house are in the trust. It doesn't make sense. House, the same thing. Somebody falls down your steps, now your kids are bankrupt because you were dumb enough to put your house directly in your trust, right? So these things, you think about it for just a second and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do that, right? So unless you isolated a land trust and the only thing in that trust is the house and nothing else, it would not make sense to put a house in the trust, right? There could be a company in the trust that owns the house. That makes sense, but not the house and not the car. So Just a little bit of critical eye to make sure you don't get, jammed up. You're not dealing with somebody who's just loud but wrong. Yeah, I mean, most people don't. Most people, it's all about how good is the video, how many followers. Oh, they got 100,000 followers, must know what they're talking about. They got a billion followers, must know what they're talking about. But a lot of it's just algorithm nonsense. You know what I mean? A lot of the followers are bots. A lot of people buy followers. You know what I mean? So if they got a good enterprise going and they're making enough money, messing with people or selling ebooks or some other such nonsense, then they can afford to go out and pay for fake followers and all of that stuff. So a lot of it's show business, right? Just keep in mind, get a legitimate, professional, and that professional, if they're legitimate, they're licensed. And there's a government agency that governs their license. And if they mess up, they lose their license. Now you're talking, right? Our lawyers are licensed. They're licensed attorneys. You can look up their license for free online, right? There's a database in the Bar Association. You can go to the Bar Association's website. It's not called that here, but you can go to the Bar Association's website and look up their license. Those are professional people, not the 10-year-old on TikTok that's talking about the Rockefeller method when he's not old enough to vote. That's not a professional person. How'd y'all get me on this soapbox? The problem, the issue is, you'll get a lot of these like relocation consultants, relocation coach, relocation specialist, blah 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 blah, and they don't have like the law firm like we own. So what they don't see is what happens when the person gets effed up. That's what they don't see, right? So they'll do their little relocation thing, and then it's hands off. Then it's off to the next, person to bring them over, and they don't see what happens when that person makes a mistake, when that person gets arrested by immigration and set for deportation because they screwed up bringing them over here, or they didn't tell them the information that they needed to know, or they just didn't have the lawyers in place to even spot that something went wrong or whatever. We get to see all that because we have a law firm. So when people get into trouble, they call the law firm, and we see exactly what went wrong and how it happened and why they're jammed up now, and whether or not we can even handle it. Like some people, it's like there's no hope for you. Just self-deport at this point. Like ask them for a deal, and see if you can self-deport and not get permanently banned, and then we can bring you back. But that's what happens when people have this much knowledge, but they have a platform that allows it to make it seem like they have way more knowledge than they do, and there's no recourse because there's no license to take. They don't even have a real company. It's like a sole proprietorship. So it's not even a business license that you can take, right? So that's why professionals are important, because professionals are taking a risk working with you the same way you're taking a risk working with them, right? That's what you want. You want there to be mutual risk and mutual incentive for reward. You can just request those things. People do it. People ask me all the time. They're like, "Oh, what's the lawyer who's assigned to my case? His name? What's their license number? Blah 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 blah." Do it all the time. One of the cool features here is that when you look up a lawyer here, you actually see what kind of law they do. That's important, because you could stumble across a tax attorney and ask them if they can help you with your immigration, and unfortunately there's a good chance they're just going to say yeah. They don't know how much it costs. They don't know what to charge you. right? Like, so, if they're doing that, the smartest thing for them to do is quote some astronomical number to make sure they're covered because they don't actually know what it costs. So if you press them for a price right then and there on the spot, the smartest thing for them to do is quote you an astronomical number so that we can cover whatever the price is, right? So you see a lot of that, people going to use your money to think that they can just figure out how to do it. There's a lot of social capital that goes into this stuff. It's not, you can't just throw money at everything and think it's going to work. So you have to have the social networks in place. There has to be the social capital to actually get things done, right? And that's why your professional networks and your professional teams matter so much because they have the social capital, right? So it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it if you don't have the social capital. It's just not going to work out for you. And that's everywhere. That's why we go to China every year. We got to keep building social capital over there. It's not all money. Yes. Well, yeah. Your housing staff, we set that up. We have programs for it so that, you have maids that, aren't going to, mess you up. When we set it up, that they know our law firm is standing behind it, right? And so if they mess with you, sometimes there's this kind of concept of like, well, they don't even know who to call. They don't even know what to do. They're kind of new here or whatever. So if we, take something from them, what are they going to do? You know what I mean? Who are they going to call? Who's going to help? But when we set it up, they know like, oh, their lawyers are going to come for me, right? Like I can't do anything crazy. I can't steal from them or nothing like that, because there's going to be consequences and repercussions. So again, social capital, right? And so yeah, we are known to do that. If you've taken our assessment or something, I think there's a question in the relocation assessment as to like, do you want us to set up your household staff if you need household staff and all that. So yeah, we do that as well. But it's an ancillary thing. We don't just do it for random people. Like if you built a house with us, then we can staff your house. But we don't like take calls from people and go find them maids. We're not an employment agency. It has to be an ancillary benefit. Yeah, man, stay in your lane. You know what I mean? That's the mantra of specialists. What we specialize in, we do. What we don't, we refer out to somebody who specializes in it. We're not about to try and figure out how to do something on your dime. So if it's not something we specialize in, we just let you know. Even when you take our assessment is designed to let you know right then and there in the assessment. It'll be like, nope, you're not a good fit. Or it'll be like, yep, you're a really good fit. And somebody will get in touch with you or whatever. But if you go to our website, it doesn't cost anything to take the assessment, and it'll absolutely let you know whether or not you're a fit right then and there. And if you're not a fit, typically somebody will still reach out to you, but not on some like try to sell you stuff because you're not a good fit. Sometimes they'll reach out and say, hey, we know of this company and they might fit you better based on what you answered in the assessment. So we're referring you to them or whatever. Yeah. What? Oh, this is not, no. This is not a Masonic ring. This is a family crest. Yeah. Family coat of arms. Issued by African Heraldic Authority. It's not. Some people make things up. And so you can't just create a pretty picture and call it your coat of arms. You can do that and call it a sigil. You can just make up a sigil and that's fine. sigils are supposed to be made up by the person or the family that uses them, that's fine. But a coat of arms has to be issued by a heraldic authority. So there are European ones, which are the ones that are like in the books and all that, and there are African ones. So ours is issued by an African heraldic authority. Yeah, if it well, so and so why it matters is connected to how real you are about it. If you're not real about it and you just like doing little fake things, that's cool, like whatever. But what ends up happening is if you're kind of being real about it and you're passing it down the family, eventually your heirs are going to look it up. And when they look it up and find out that it's fake, imposter syndrome and a bunch of other psychological things are going to hit, right? So it actually messes them up more than it messes you up to fake something like that. So just don't fake things. Just, you want a little family symbol, just make a sigil. It is what it is. If you want a coat of arms, it has to be granted. There has to be a grant of arms. And you have to be able to show that if it's asked for. And you have to be able to describe your arms in a blazon. And if you don't know what that is, see, like, so as the talk gets deeper, right? That's where the the kind of loss of cultural capital happens, and then the imposter syndrome sets in, right? Because you got somebody with a crest tattooed on their chest or something like that, and they run into somebody who is actually into coat of arms and has their own real coat of arms, not like, oh, I looked up the family name Smith. That's all marketing BS, right? So now you got your kids moving through the world telling people stuff, maybe even to the point where they done tattooed something on them. And then when that comes up in conversation, they feel like crap now that they feel exposed. You know what I mean? They feel like a fraud, all because somebody thought it was cute to like fake the funk. So just, I mean, you know, make sure that you do real stuff, guys. There's so much like weird fake stuff with the internet. Just do real stuff. Just be you and do real stuff. Yeah. There's a oh, this is a this. All right, hold on. Let me join this live from my personal, and then you can go see my personal. Let's see. There you go. All right, so if you want to see like my grant of arms and stuff, just go to my personal account, and it's in there somewhere. Just look through that stuff. It's amazing though the things that you guys see, the level of distraction that plays out in your questions that you ask. I guess it's good though. I guess you're paying attention. This doesn't even look like a Masonic ring though. Did I have a bigger? Yeah, there. I mean, there are different. Like this is an everyday wear ring. Um, During Memorial, there's a Memorial Day in our family. During Memorial Day, there's like a bigger ceremonial ring, and then there's a ring that's like a wax seal that you probably never seen me wear. So there's different. It depends on what the legacies and traditions you have in your family. Is that read what you wrote? It doesn't make any sense at all. I'm assuming it's talk to text. Just go ahead and read what you wrote and then fix it and let me know what you were actually talking about. Ask your question in the chat first before you come up, especially if I don't know you. Oh, yeah. So that's not the way the withholding tax works. But good question, because I guess a lot of people don't know. So what ends up happening is if it's not an infrastructure bond, then there's typically a 10% withholding tax. I think there are these special bonds that have a 15%, but I haven't even ever seen one. So it's typically a 10% withholding tax. But the withholding tax is on the ROI, not on the principal, right? So you buy your bond ladder, you put your principal in, and if it's 60,000 that's coming out, then they're going to remove six from that, so you're going to get 54. So it's not like if your ROI is 10% and the withholding tax is 10%, then it equals zero. No. If your ROI is 10%, it's 10% of the principal, and then of that interest that they're paying to you, 10% of that would be the withholding tax, and that comes off before it even gets to you. So that's the way that that works. Yeah, some people who like have never engaged with bonds before, I see that question a lot. Like, oh, well, if it's 10% and the withholding tax is 10%, then doesn't it zero out? No, the tax is of the actual 10%. So it's 10% of 10%, right? Good question, though. I can show it to you, but you have to come over to TikTok. But I'll put it up, and then you can see what's going on here. Let's see. What is that? That's not it. That looks like it. Is that it? Those are the percentages, but that doesn't show you the payout. So this must be it. There you go. All right. So if you're over on the TikTok now, if not, then when you get here, you should be able to see it or whatever. But you can see, like, let me just, July and January are the same because it's every 6 months. So let me just start with July because there's some stuff on the screen that's blocking the top. So in July, there's a 60,000 gross payout on that particular bond, which means that that bond was 12%. And so the 12% ROI has rendered a 60,000 local currency payout. And then you see under the tax deduction side, 6,000 has been deducted as taxes. And then you see what hit the actual bank account of our clients was the 54,000. Right. The very next month, it's a different bond, different interest rate, and it's tax exempt because it's an infrastructure bond, beautiful bond. So the very next month, the gross payout was 92,303.50, and there was zero taxes. So what hit the bank account was 92,303.50. Right? See how that works? The next month, a different bond because it's a bond ladder. So there's six different bonds here. Next month, that gross payout was 80,000. Right now, what's our target? 50,000. Right? Okay. The gross payout was 80,000. 8,000 is the 10% of the 80,000 of the payout, and so what hit the bank account was 72,000. See how it works? So it's not. It doesn't wipe it out. It's a percentage of the percentage. All right. 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 Exactly. Yeah. 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 So yeah, their lowest payout is 54,000, which is above our 50,000 threshold, and their highest payout was 92,303.50 cents. The average is like, let's see, the average is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 69,000 a month, 69, 70,000 a month, somewhere in there. Well, your net yield is going to be based on your portfolio, but last year's portfolio, which is their permanent net yield until you know the bonds mature, right? Until the bonds are over. But last year's portfolio, their net yield was 13.58% overall. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to matter to everybody. Like the people who are living off of it, it doesn't matter. Now, if you're building generational wealth off of it, then you can start playing with, which yields you want and all that stuff. But if you're taking the payment every month and that's, what's paying, all your bills and your food and your grocery and all of that stuff, then it actually doesn't matter. Right, right, right. That's why it really jumps off for two specific types of client. It really jumps off for your generational wealth clients because they're now, it really doesn't actually matter for them either, right? But now they're getting payments in their generational wealth trust funds every month without them having to pay anything. So now the compounding effect of that generational wealth trust just increased by a factor of 12, right? And so that's awesome for them. And then what's going on with the people who are relocating is they could essentially quit their job and just live off of the passive income. So that's great for them. And if they do that, it may qualify, depending on how they have it structured, as foreign earned income, right? So if it's qualifying as foreign earned income from the U.S. definition, then now up to $130,000 is tax exempt from the U.S. as well, right? So it just depends on your structures, and your structures you're going to be guided to through your professionals. So like your tax professionals, your law professionals locally, and all that. We have all the professionals on this side covered. But your local professionals, if you're going back and forth, or if you're still in the U.S., or if you're worried about U.S. filings, just got to have those professionals in place. We do have EAs over here, like U.S. EAs that are American and they're certified, that can help you, with your tax stuff on this side as well. So yeah, you just have to just get those professionals in place, man. Get your plan together, execute the plan, and you're golden. You get to live an amazing life. I wish you guys, you know, the ability to live life on your terms, man. When you don't have to worry about money anymore, it is a beautiful thing. I say what I want when I want. I do what I want when I want. That's it. That's it. You know, when you got these bonds sitting around, and they're just paying you, right? Like they're just every month a check is coming. You don't have to have just one. A lot of folks, once they get that first bond ladder and they get a taste of that, and they know the interest rates are going to go back down, that they know they're still up now, they go get another one and another one and another one. And, as much as they got the money to get, they start getting. Because why not? You know, so you can have a bond ladder that's paying into your trust fund and keeping, your trust going. You can have, we even had a client that like, the wife is a housewife, and there's like a budget. There's like a household budget. So the wife essentially has like a part of the budget to do whatever she wants with, right? And like he just did a bond ladder for it. It was like, all right, cool, bond ladder. Whatever comes out of the bond ladder is now your side of the budget where you can just do discretionary buying and all that. So it's like $1 million a year that's coming out of that bond ladder. She do whatever the hell she wants with, right? So he has one for the kids, which is in the trust. He has one for himself. He has one for his business. So he doesn't worry about paying his employees or like finding money to pay his employees when business is down. The bond just makes a payment into the business and that covers everything. And so, yeah, once people get a taste of it, they typically get more ladders. But those days, it'll be the good old days soon. When you hear people talking about, man, I had a bond ladder, had a 10-year bond ladder with Diaspora Freedom Initiative. Those days are long gone. Bonds are 7% now. So it won't last. It's just impossible for it to last. Anyone talking about like it's going to be like that forever is ridiculous. But right now, while they're doing their essentially their last minute infrastructure projects until they flip the switch and go to developed, it's a beautiful time. So we think it's going to last another year, maybe. Like we're hoping we get this year for sure, and then we're hoping we get like next year, and then we're expecting like after the elections in 2027, we're expecting that it probably drops after that. Maybe there might be an alternative country. That's also why we're looking at certain expansion locations, because there are certain countries that are like on their way up. Burkina Faso is one of them, but right now it's still like up in the air, like it's not stable yet. But they're like building new airports and building factories and like building things, creating infrastructure. So if they're doing that, it leans to reason that they're eventually going to have to do you know sovereign debt, right, which is bonds. So they're eventually going to have to start loaning money from the people to do the infrastructure projects and then pay the people back, right? If they don't want to deal with the IMF, which I don't think they do, and all of these other kind of organizations, and they're going to have to start loaning money from the people and paying the people back. And so that's where these like crazy bond situations come in at. So we're keeping our eye on the situation, but there's no guarantee that we're going to find another place. You know what I mean? Once it's done, it might just be done. So it is what it is, I suppose, with that. Oh, thanks for liking the live. I see we're popping 4,000 there. Thank you. I appreciate that. I always forget to say it. TikTok pops up these little messages on my screen and tries to remind me to remind you, and I always forget. Guess I'm a bad host in that way, at least a TikTok host. And then when I do say it, the people on Facebook Live and the people on YouTube Live are like, do what? Yes, yes, yes. All right, yeah. So, any other questions on that? We've been here for 2 hours. Any other questions on end of year special, bond laddering, generational wealth trusts? Any questions on that? You're really interested in coat of arms, huh? If you do a trust estate, you'll be issued a coat of arms from the Kenyan Heraldic Authority. So, if you do a trust estate, which you can do the end of year special and designate it a trust estate. So, there's that. Since it seems like you're very interested. All right, guys. Well, my day is about to start. I'm about to go to work. We open in 25 minutes. So I got to go do the emails and get that squared away first. So, any other questions? If you're writing a question now, just hit enter, and then I'll wait for you to go ahead and fix it or finish whatever it was you were saying. If you need me to wait, if you're like looking something up or something, just put a 1 in the chat. Other than that, it's been 2 hours and I will call it. All right, Freedom Family. It looks like we're good. Everybody has the information that they want to have. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks, guys.